I'm Tanner Johnson.
And I'm Jack Dodgen.
We're from the Eastside Church of Christ. Teen life can be difficult to navigate. New emotions, experiences, pressures, and challenges shape what we understand about our identity. It's almost like navigating a maze. Twists, turns, dead ends. The race can be both exhilarating and terrifying. At Through the Maze podcast, we believe Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. When we put our trust in Him, we can navigate the maze and build our identity based on who He says we are. And in the end, find life and life to the fullest. Thank you for walking alongside us today. Hi everybody, welcome back to the podcast. It's Tanner Johnson here, and got Jack here with us today. How you doing?
Good. I'm doing quite well, I think. It's a little early.
Right. Yeah.
I think I'll do great today.
Yeah. It's the weird timing this week. We usually have a few more hours into the day before we record, but yeah, we'll knock it out. We'll do fine.
Yeah.
We're wanting to get into a new series today. Actually, we're talking about bullying. And this is going to be a 3-parter, so a little bit different than the usual. Getting into that, as we get into this series, I know we just kind of jumped right in there. But as we get into this series, we want to make sure that we're intentional talking about these groups. We want to do 1 week talking about what if I'm being bullied? What do you do? How to kind of recognize it as actual bullying and not something else maybe, but we want to talk about people that engage in bullying, and we want to make sure to say it that way because people are not bullies, just like people are not their mistakes, right? Like people are people that make mistakes, right? And people are people that do wrong things. So we want to acknowledge the value every single person has in the sight of God as being made in the image of God, but sometimes people make mistakes. And thirdly, we're going to talk about people that witness bullying and what you can do if you are maybe not a victim of it, but you see it happening, and what you should do about it. So it's kind of the game plan for the next couple weeks here. So we have the core elements of bullying as given by the CDC in 2014. Their definition of bullying is unwanted aggressive behavior. Okay, there's an observed or perceived power imbalance between two people. And there's often repetition or high repetition of bullying behaviors that go on. So
you normally think of thinking about the power imbalance thing. You normally in the movies it's the giant kid and then the way smaller kid. That can be true, but it could also just be something else entirely, like. Somebody who's in charge of something else that you want to be a part of, that's putting you through it in order to be a part of it, or purposefully excluding you from stuff. It could be that. It doesn't have to be physical. It could be a number of other things. So
it could be something like hazing. Maybe it might be kind of the example we're going, which I heard a story about from one of our teens just this past week was telling me about their school football team was I won't say the school obviously, but they were engaged in, like, they found a lot of instances of hazing within the football team. Apparently tasers were involved. Maybe that's hearsay, I don't know. But so pretty rough stuff. So it can get pretty intense. But some examples of what bullying might look like if you're trying to determine whether or not you're there. It's maybe being made the subject of rumors or lies is one of the most prevalent ones. Being made fun of, called names, insulted. It could be physical. You're pushed, shoved, tripped, things like that. If you are purposefully left out, excluded from things, maybe you are threatened with harm, really bad. Others try to make you do things that you don't want to do, or there's property that's purposefully destroyed. Those are all instances of being bullied. Maybe one of the, I guess, a note on this, you can probably tell if you're being bullied if you kind of find yourself walking on eggshells around a specific person. You're extra careful about what you say or what you do out of fear of provoking them. It's kind of, and it's different from, I'm going to watch what I say because I have respect for this person. It's more of, I'm going to watch what I say because I don't want them to make fun of me. I don't want them to
Yeah.
hit me, or I don't want them to, do those kind of things. So
part of why our phrasing is what it is, at least our attempt at it, even though we may mess that up, and why the next episode will deal with the one who's doing the bullying and all of that, is that tends to be a symptom of something else, that they're dealing with something in an inappropriate way, and that lashes out onto other people, but there are issues that they're struggling with, and so the reason they're getting provoked is probably because of that other stuff. They're at 99% full.
Right.
The other thing just pushes them over to the edge, and then they respond inappropriately to their own issues.
Right. I mean, you can always think of an experience where you just had a bad day. You woke up on the wrong side of bed, and then someone says something the wrong way, it throws you off, or maybe you're hungry. You didn't have your breakfast this morning, didn't eat your Wheaties like you were supposed to, and things are just off. Or it could be something way more intense, like the way that they're being treated at home, or the way they're being treated by somebody else. Yeah. There's a different place where they've come to feel powerless, and so now they try to exert their power on someone less than, right? Yeah. But we'll get into that later on. So I got some statistics here on kids that are bullied, or teenagers that are bullied, because we're going to focus on that part of it, the what if I'm being bullied, right? Yeah. Because it's definitely, with that power imbalance, you can feel it. About 20% of students ages 12 to 18 have experienced bullying. That's 1 in 5, right? Like, that's 1 out of every 5 kids has at least reported that they've experienced it, right? It may be a bigger number that just they've dealt with it and they just are quiet about it, right? 15% of that report that they were bullied online or through text messages, things like that, which is kind of terrifying to think about, because that means you never get away from it. Like, it's not like you can go to school and you're bullied and then you can go home and you're away. It's just it'll follow you home, and that's kind of scary. But there's always that access there. So talking about the bullied person's perception of the person that bullies them, they have 56% believe that the bully had the ability to influence the perception that others had on them. So this bully is able to, like, they not only bully you, but they can make all of your friend group think this person's lower than you. It's 50% they would report that the bully was somebody that had more social influence than they did. You can kind of feel the power imbalance growing as we go through these. 40% physically stronger or larger, like you said, the large kid picking on the easy target, right? Like I remember, and it's terrible. I remember back in high school, our football team, as far as hazing goes, there's something about football and bullying people. Yeah. But I know that there was this kid that we had there. He was a lot smaller, a little bit quirky, how it goes. But I remember instances where this kid was put into trash cans and, pushed around. He carried around this really big backpack for his size, I guess. And I remember a story of him actually getting zipped up in there in his backpack, and it was just awful. It's just a terrible, terrible thing to witness, terrible thing to see. But, it's these people that are bigger, stronger. They do have more influence in some cases. They pick on the less than. There's definitely that power imbalance that you see.
Yeah.
So some of the effects that you have on bullied teens is increased levels of depression and anxiety, increased feelings of sadness and loneliness. There's changes in sleep and eating patterns. There's this loss of interest in activities they used to enjoy, which is that's always sad to me. Like, there's something that you really love doing, and just because somebody makes fun of you, you cut it out. Like, that's sad to me. I don't know. But these things, they may persist into adulthood. Like, they just keep going. There's decreased academic achievement. GPA, standardized test scores are way lower. School participation's way down. More likely to miss, skip, or drop out of school entirely. And this is obviously, this is an outlier statistic. A very small number of bullied children might retaliate through extremely violent measures. So if you think about in 12 of 15 of the school shootings that happened in 1990, I don't know if I said that right. Yeah. Oh, never mind. In 12 of 15 school shootings in the 1990s, the shooters had a history of being bullied. So that doesn't mean because they were bullied, they went and shot the school and stuff. But there was a history there that had occurred. So there might be a short outlier of bullied kids might retaliate in very violent ways.
Right.
You know, once you feel that powerless, you know, there's no telling where desperation might take people. But we're going to get into some scriptures today, and we'll be in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 through 41, and Jesus has some stuff to say about this. Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 through 41 says, "You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles." Reading that, and if you're reading that as a teenager that is bullied often, you might be thinking, yeah, right. Like, they slap you on one cheek, give them the other. No way that's happening, right? So at the beginning of this, Jesus is referring to a law that is, when used in its original context, had to do with a justice system, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, right? Which is the way we usually like to, you know,
should be fair,
right?
Should
we think
be
that's fair.
Yeah.
It was interpreted though to justify vengeance in those days. The problem with people is we don't really get even, we get better, right? Like, I'm not just going to get back at them, I'm going to make sure that they hurt enough to where they don't mess with me anymore, which very seldomly solves a problem, right? Best examples that I can think of are, like, at least not as serious, are prank wars, right? As a youth minister the past few years, I've seen some camp prank wars that have gone way off the rails. You know, it starts with, oh, we were going to like move their pillows to underneath their bed instead of on their bed, and then next thing you know,
icy hot on the toilet seats. Yeah.
Right, icy hot on the toilet seats. Yeah, and then you start seeing the explosions on the hills.
Yeah.
You know, it gets way out of hand. I know.
Somebody gets kidnapped.
Right,
stuff, yeah.
right.
Camp's great.
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. But you know, I've never been into prank wars personally because I know what it means. It means the last day of camp, there's a lot more cleaning to do than you would have had to in the first place. And
we got in trouble really bad.
Right. Yeah, I remember it may have been Dale Hartman. I don't know who told me a story of like after a prank war, he had kids take like a stack of logs from the top of the mountain down to the bottom. And he's like, well, you know what? Those don't look that good there. Take them back up or something. It was crazy. Like, you know, it's pretty cool. So, nipping that in the bud is something. But retaliation usually includes escalation to a point, which means like we don't get back, we get even. The justice system that we have, it's not perfect, but it's supposed to iron some of that out. So in the context of seeking justice, it's supposed to do that. But vengeance is a completely different thing, and that's usually what we go for. Jesus is offering another solution. He's offering a different way to think about the way we deal with it. I mean, think about who he's talking about or dealing with. Slap on the right cheek. You have your violent interaction that's taking place, right?
Yeah.
Somebody takes your coat. That's theft of your property, right? You're stealing your property. Someone forces you to go 1 mile. You're forced to do something that you don't want to do. Jesus is talking about bullies. Right? He's talking about people that are imposing their will on somebody else.
The Romans specifically would literally do all three of these things. These aren't hypotheticals. The Jewish people were dealing with this stuff regularly from the Romans, and there was even the law of, I can force you to carry my armor for a mile. And this was stuff that was happening all the time for them when Jesus comes and starts talking about these things.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, he's trying to give us a way of living it's very difficult. Like, it's very, very difficult because that's not our gut reaction to somebody doing something wrong to us. And this way of living takes a serious amount of maturity, or if you want to look at it differently, maybe just the right amount of immaturity. Yeah, we're kind of given instruction to almost use this form of like a righteous sarcasm in a way. If you look at it, you're slapped on one cheek. It's like, hey, I'm going to give you a compliment. Like, hey, have you gotten stronger? Like, you've been hitting the weights, haven't you? You know, see if you can. I'll give you this cheek. Let's see if you can do better on this side, right? Like the sting's kind of fading on this side. Let's see if you can do a little bit better. You know, this is my good side. But anyway, takes your coat. You know what? I've been needing to clean out my closet. You know, how about you just go ahead and take my shirt? You're going to love these socks I got on right now. They're Power Rangers, you know. They look great. There weren't Power Rangers back in that day. But anyway, whatever the equivalent of Power Rangers was, I'm sure they had those. But anyway, or if they even wore socks. I don't know. Mostly sandals. But anyway.
If they had socks, it would be.
Right. Yeah. That's details. Yeah, I got my my Elijah socks on right now. You'll want. Anyway, so then you have going the extra mile. It's like the idea that you said they could actually force you to go 1 mile, but then it's like you get to that mile and it's like, you know what, how about let's go one more. You know, it's just been an honor to carry your stuff today, so I'm going to take this stuff and I'm going to follow you for the rest of the day. And I bet around that time the Romans are like, what's going on here? A little bit weird.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is kind of giving this way. I mean, that's a goofy way of explaining it, but what it is at its core is responding to mistreatment and hate with overwhelming love. It's taking the bad and not being a part of that, but instead doing something good. Instead of creating this cycle of vengeance that goes back and forth, if you respond to bad with bad, it just gets worse, right?
Going back to that mile thing. So armor, as you can imagine, is going to be super heavy to carry, which is why the Romans didn't want to wear it when they didn't have to. Right. So carry my junk for a mile. And what they did outside of the city was they had mile markers so that they could get to the end of the mile and then go, here's your stuff back. By law, I don't have to carry your junk anymore. It's all yours now. So imagine somebody going the extra mile, as he says, carry it another. Okay, you know, you're supposed to give me my stuff back. I understand you don't have to. No, it's okay. I'll go one more with you. Is opportunity now for the question of, but why would you do that?
Yeah.
I can't force you to do another. Yeah, no, I want to.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah,
why?
It's weird. Like,
why?
Right?
Yeah. And that's the question that we want to come from all of this. And we'll read another passage in a little while here, but it speaks to that same sort of thing of why? Why are you doing this? And now you have an opportunity to break the cycle instead of letting it continue. Like Tanner said.
Right. Yeah, it's almost. It's almost negating that power imbalance in a way. Like you're kind of making it to where they don't have that power. It's almost you're taking, you have your own power that you decide, you know what, they're not in control of where I'm going. You know, I can leave right now if I want to, but you know, like following Jesus' example, I'm going to serve and continue loving this person. That's crazy, you know, especially people that don't know Jesus. That's really weird. But it has an effect on the person. Like they ask the question, why would you do this, right? But there's always going to be people that bully. It's just, there's always going to be those people. Jesus is trying to lead you to develop an attitude and a heart for his way of life that'll make you bully proof, right? A person that bullies may be able to create a physical power imbalance, but they can't take power over your soul if you don't allow it, right? They don't have power over your decision making if you don't allow it. They don't have the way that you see the world doesn't have to change. You can see that person as somebody who's going through something. You can see that person as someone who's making mistakes. You can see that person as they obviously have something that's going on with them. I can still be positive about the world. I can still follow Jesus, and I can still believe that showing love is better than what they're doing. Right.
That goes to that peer pressure conversation that we had a little while back of. There is pressure to bullying that can get us in a position of I'm going to respond similarly to how they've given me if I can, or I'm gonna. You know, this is saying remember who you belong to and respond like that instead, regardless of who is doing what to you. Right. Yeah.
Yes. This foundation of knowing who you are, what you're all about. Right.
Yeah.
So a couple pieces of advice that we need to look at, going off of obviously what Jesus said, but into some other practical advice. First would be to evaluate the relationship and the threat that's involved with the relationship. so sometimes bullying happens between friends, right? Like
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just this big kid sees a little kid and says, I can impose my will on them. That happens. Sometimes it's just between friends, where it's like, this is our friend group. I happen to be the smaller one in my friend group. They're the bigger one in the friend group. That I'm the butt of all the jokes. I'm all that. So maybe to evaluate the relationship, is this person a bully, or are they a friend that's having a bad day? Maybe look into that a little bit. Make sure that there's not something there. If you're friends, you can say, "Hey, are you good today? Like you're laying it on a little thick right now. You should probably I appreciate you back off."
And like all of my friend groups, and I assume every guy's friend group always. I don't know how girls function, but
right.
You make fun of each other.
Yeah.
But if it may, here's what I'm getting at is that this may be unintentional bullying of, he's the shortest one, and so we always tell short jokes or whatever, without realizing we're beyond joke now. That actually really hurts.
Yeah.
And so it becomes bullying without the intention of doing so. That also happens too.
Yeah.
So evaluate that relationship and what's going on there.
Yeah, evaluate that for sure. Maybe you need to ask yourself at the same time, and if it is on the harmful side of things, and maybe you go through all those steps of, hey, this is getting to me a little bit, and like if you could back off a little bit, and they don't respect that you are hurting and that it's damaging to you, maybe you need to evaluate, do you need to do your best to just avoid contact with this person? Maybe I need to get away from that because it's just tearing me down over and over and over again. I think there's a certain point where you do that. I think you try to, when it comes to relationships, I know that there's, God wants good relationships, right? Friendships, all those things. Good positive people encouraging each other, but at some point it gets so damaging that you have to do something for yourself, and like this is just awful, right? Another idea, especially if there are threats of physical violence, but doesn't necessarily have to be physical violence. It's kind of if it goes to a point where it's off the rails, you need to tell a trusted adult. If bullying is just over the top and you can't handle it, you need to be able to trust an adult. And I don't know if I put this stat up earlier, if I mentioned it. If I didn't mention it, I'll say it here. About 48% of kids that are bullied, only 48% of kids that are bullied actually report it to. So the less than half of students that are bullied will say something about it or report it. So that's less than half of these cases of being bullied where it's actually reported to an adult. There's a quote that I don't know if it still goes around today. I know it was back when I was in high school, but there's this quote out there that's like, snitches get stitches. You ever hear that one? Yeah, that one's pretty fancy. Yeah. Who told you?
But I'm also old like you. So.
Right, yeah. Who told you about that? Anyway, who snitched? But anyway, and like, where does that come from? Like, where does that idea come from? It comes from bullies or people that bully, right? That's a bully tactic. Like, there's this power imbalance that's happening, and you better not do anything to switch or turn the tides, right? Like, if you go talk to somebody and like tell on me, like.
Yeah, that's the knowledge is power thing. By informing somebody else, you are shifting now the power imbalance. It's becoming a little more even because this person may be bigger than you, but bigger than 3 or 4 or 5 people. That becomes an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's better chances to get stitches, quote unquote, stuck in a cycle of bullying where you just keep letting it happen because there's more interactions where it's damaging over and over again. But you may tell yourself that you're able to handle it, and maybe you can. Maybe you can take all the stuff that they have to throw at you, and it's fine. But maybe the next person they bully might not be able to. It's like when you tell a trusted adult, whenever action is taken against this, that's when change can be made. Hopefully in a positive way. Hopefully in a constructive manner, things can be changed, and somebody else down the road won't deal with the same harm that you're dealing with, or the same struggles that you have to go through when it comes to this particular bully.
Yeah, we read out of the Sermon on the Mount. I think I don't know that we've done that in every episode, but we've already been in the Sermon on the Mount before too. It's a very good place to go.
Right.
You have Jesus talking about the kingdom there, and we have that really. I think this is the passage we read in a previous episode. The light of the world, salt of the earth, sort of thing. You might be you might have ways of coping with what's going on, but as Christians, our hope is for the world to be changed. So we're not thinking about this selfishly and going, okay, they're being mean to me, but I can handle. We got to think about, no, this is wrong, and we want the wrongs of the world to be righted. We want those things to be changed and fixed. So so tell somebody, even if you think, well, I can carry this on my shoulders.
Right.
It may not just be you, and we want true justice to come and fix the world.
Yeah, for sure. A little bit more on the spiritual side of this. I've heard this story once about this elder and, well, maybe it may have been a preacher, and one of the members of their church that had kind of been back and forth at it for a long time. They, kind of dreaded the preacher dreaded dealing with this person, all that stuff. He was given the advice by a close friend to spend the next month praying for that person. And what ended up happening by the end of that month is they did all the praying, and next thing you know, I mean, not magically, obviously, like something happened between those two that their relationship was fixed. It was maybe it changes the way that you look at somebody when you pray for them. It changes the way God may be working in ways that you don't understand in the background. But maybe a piece of advice is to spend the next couple weeks or month praying for that person that you see as a bully, and pray for them by name. Be thinking about the things that they're doing, but not, don't pray that they get, smitten by a lightning bolt or something. That won't work. But pray that you have different eyes for them, that you maybe find ways to do the next thing, which is to serve them. Find a legitimate way, and not sarcastically, like I kind of joked about earlier, but find a legitimate way to serve them, to go that extra mile, if you will. Find ways to be kind and encouraging to that person that is bullying you. And
it's what Jesus talks about, and then Paul comes back to it later in Romans 12. I'll just go ahead and read that. Romans 12, 20 through 21, and it even goes into the next chapter too. But that's, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Yeah. So this sounds a lot more appealing, I think, than what Jesus said earlier.
Yeah, we sit there on that middle part. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you stopped right there, I think we'd get a lot more people on board with this.
That's how I hurt them.
That's right. Let's put some coals on their head. Which
is not the point at all.
It's not the point at all. Yeah, because we're talking about this change of heart for us, the way that we respond to the world. Bullying's built upon this imbalance of this perceived imbalance of power. The person that is bullying you is also a person with needs. They have something going on that they're dealing with. There's a scripture later on that Paul actually says, where he says, "Our struggle's not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of wickedness in the heavenly places," which is important to remember. Like, we really want to say that it's me versus that person, when really it's supposed to be we're all together. Right? Yeah. It's people against the wicked forces that are at work in the world.
Yep.
About the evil, the destructive sin that's going on. But when you respond to wickedness with overwhelming love, you're meeting a deep spiritual need in such a stark contrast that you might stir up a realization about a person's meanness in their heart. Like, it's like, I'm trying to hurt this kid, but they keep being nice to me. Like, what's going on? Like, why am I? And then maybe there's a realization that is stirred up, like, I maybe, like, there's something wrong. I need to look inward here. Like, I'm picking on a really good kid,
Yeah, that's the burning coal stuff. This is how I inflict pain in return. It's by behaving properly, that you give them something that they have to address. This issue of, wow, why do I feel so bad doing this thing?
And I think I've also heard that back in that day, like, if someone, like, they lost their fire that they're supposed to keep up working, like a hearth fire. I don't know if that's what it's called.
Sure.
But it's like something that they had in their homes, and fire's important to cook everything. If your fire goes out, you're in trouble. And there would be people that would walk around town, and they'd have this bowl on top of their head, and people would put. You might have to fact check me to make sure that's right. But they'd put burning coals to help keep their fire going in their home. And so it's almost like this a meeting of needs that takes place because if we're acknowledging that people that are bullied are in need of something, and the way they're trying to meet that needs is this power imbalance with somebody else, and if we meet those deeper needs, whether it's like they just need a friend, or they need kindness, or they need something that's there, we meet that need in a way, and it kind of is trying to fix that. But anyway, but lastly, as where we're going to try to wrap up here, is that Christ wants you to be far more concerned about the state of your heart. That's what we're talking about. That's what the Sermon on the Mount is mostly about, being concerned about the state of your heart and your relationship with God. That's all you really have some level of control over. When someone slanders you, you respond with truth. When you're cheated, you respond with generosity. When someone's mean to you, you respond with kindness. When you receive hate, you respond with love. Unfortunately, there are these forces in the world that we just got done talking about that are just bent on destroying what's good. And yes, that includes you.
Yep.
You are good. You are made in God's image. So are the people that engage in bullying. But as beings made in the image of God, our purpose is to create, to bring beauty and goodness into the world. If we are overwhelmingly committed to that goal, nothing evil thrown at us can stick. We don't have to hold on to that evil. We don't have to let it have power over us. That's when we become bully-proof. It's when, no matter what, we are going towards this goal of creating as God creates and making good stuff happen. So those are our thoughts for today. Jack, you got anything else to add on those?
I know it's hard, but go be the kingdom. That's how cycle breaks, and that's how we address. That's how God addresses evil, is one, through Christ, and two, through us breaking those cycles.
Absolutely. Awesome. If you have any comments to leave, if you have any thoughts that you want to share with us, leave them for us, and appreciate you guys taking the time to listen. Have a good one. Thank you for joining us on the Through the Maze podcast. This is the part where we navigate teen life together. Subscribe and like this podcast, share it with friends, leave a comment about your experience dealing with the issues we talked about. We don't pretend to have all the answers. We'd love to see you share what has worked for you and what hasn't worked. What are your stories about dealing with today's topic? It's also an opportunity to share a word of encouragement as we try to understand where Christ is leading us as we navigate through the maze.